Hello guys, Møjdal here. Today's video will be the first in what will hopefully be a series of videos where we look at some special and unique pieces of gear from Classic World of Warcraft. The topic of this video will be what I have dubbed forbidden items, but before we get to that, let me give a brief introduction. When World of Warcraft was originally made, Blizzard was very creative in regards to item design and itemization. It was unexplored land to a certain degree. They didn't have as clear ideas as we have today of what a good mage item or rogue item is, for example. That's probably one of the reasons why you will see agility on a cloth piece of gear like the Speedy Razor goggles, or why the Shadowcraft boots from the Rogue Dungeon set originally had 21 intellect before being changed. Vanilla or Classic World of Warcraft had and still has a lot of those items, but playing around with the basic stats such as agility, intellect, strength and so on is only one way to be creative and make weird items. In this video we look at how Blizzard limited the accessibility of certain pieces of gear by adding profession, race or class restrictions where it doesn't seem so obvious. I'm not talking about class quest rewards, endgame item sets or crafted profession gear where those types of restrictions can make sense and are very common. Rather, I'm talking about the special and unique cases that stand out for different reasons where the restrictions are more questionable. The questionable nature of the restrictions on some of the items is what led me to the slightly ironic term forbidden, as if Blizzard had some unknown malicious reasons for limiting and restricting their use. And who knows, maybe they did. So I think it's about time we go ahead and look at the first forbidden item. The first piece of gear in the spotlight is the main hand sword Phytoblade from the quest Blisters on the Land in the Wetlands. Phytoblade is special since it is the only item in Classic that requires a skill level in herbalism to use. Yes, you need to be good at picking up flowers to equip it. I could better understand the herbalism requirement if it was rewarded from an herbalism specific quest, but it is not. It's a regular quest available to any Alliance player regardless of professions. In a way, it's pretty cool to have quest rewards like this since it gives a lot of flair to the items and it makes professions matter more. On the other hand, it greatly limits the amount of players who will ever use an item like Phytoblade, so it might not be very great design in that regard. I think Blizzard realized that pretty quickly since there are only two primary profession-specific pieces of gear rewarded from normal quests in the entire game. The other one is the Servomechanic Sledgehammer from the quest Sunken Treasure in the Arathi Highlands, and it's actually the only item that increases weapon skill with two-handed maces. But that's not why we are interested in it. The Sledgehammer requires a skill level of 100 in engineering to use, which is admittedly a bit more normal than herbalism. There are many engineering specific items, trinkets most of all in the game, but they are crafted through the profession and are not rewarded through some random quest, which is what's special here. For the Sledgehammer, I don't see any reason in the quest text why the engineering tag would be there on the item, and the other quest reward, the Gnomish Sapper, has no restrictions. For the Phytoblade, the lore behind the chain quest it's rewarded from does have a nature preservation theme, so in that regard the herbalism requirement on it could be justified. Still, the two other rewards from the quest don't have any requirements. Like I said, I think the uniqueness of the Phytoblade and the Sledgehammer make them cool and interesting, and it's fun to speculate about the design philosophy behind them. I definitely would not want to see them changed in Classic, but the restrictions do seem unnecessary, like an old database comment says in relation to the Phytoblade. There are actually two other items similar to the Phytoblade and Servomechanic Sledgehammer, but they are very rare BoE dungeon drops and not quest rewards. The first one is the Mechbuilder's overalls, a blue quality drop from some of the trash in Gnomeregan. The overalls is a cloth chest piece that requires 75 skill points in engineering to use, and it's actually a very powerful item for the level with the intellect it provides. The second item is the Digmaster 5000, an absurdly rare drop from Uldaman, even more rare than the Pendulum of Doom. The Digmaster 5000 is a one-handed axe that requires 175 skill points in mining to use, making it the only one item in Classic WoW with a mining requirement. Unfortunately, you will not be able to use it instead of a mining pick, which would have made a lot of sense, but it is still awesome. Again, I would argue that the profession restrictions here are unnecessary and they limit the already very small use of the items. Do I still like the Digmaster 5000 as the only item in the game with a mining requirement and then it drops as a rare BoE in Uldaman? Definitely. I also like the overalls. It still sucks for people that don't have those professions but wanted to use the items otherwise. I can see why the Digmaster would maybe require some skill in mining to handle, but then again, you're using it as a weapon against other people and not to mine any mines. I think there's a difference. That you would need even the slightest level of engineering education to put on an overall is beyond me. Well, maybe it's a very sophisticated piece of clothing. I think you can rightfully use the term forbidden for all those items since they are forbidden for unapparent reasons to everyone who doesn't have a particular skill in the given professions. Moving on from class-specific items, let's take a look at the only race-specific piece of gear in the entire game. The Goblin Smasher from the Supervisor Fitzbucket quest in Mulgore. It is usable only by Torrents, and I have no idea why it has that limitation, to be honest. From a practical perspective, it doesn't make much sense that somehow only upright standing cows can use this mace, the Goblin Smasher, but it does make it unique. Since it is a quest reward from a starting zone, the race restriction won't matter in most cases, so it's not that big of a deal. On the other hand, if the same Torrent-only restriction applied to an item like, let's say, the Crescent Staff which you get in Thunderbluff, a lot of people would definitely not be happy. An interesting fact about Mulgore is that the water well cleansing quests where you go around the zone and cleanse the water wells is Torrent only, and the totems you get can only be used by Torrents. I don't think there are any similar quests in the other starting zones, maybe some turn-in quests but nothing like this. I thought it was interesting combined with the Goblin Smasher limitation. I'm not sure what the deal is with the Torrent here. We have covered profession and race restricted items. I hope you're not starting to feel claustrophobic, because to complete the hat trick we need to look at some class restricted gear as well. Like I said in the intro, we have endgame items for specific classes, most notably item sets, and a lot of class quests that reward class gear, but that's not what we're interested in here. To be exact, we're interested in 3 much lower level items that could drop for anyone regardless of class, but for whatever reason Blizzard decided not to make them usable by everyone. The Red Defier's mask does technically fit the criteria, but since it has no stats and is purely cosmetic, it's a bit different. The choice behind making it rogue only doesn't really have any true gameplay implications. The first proper item is the Freezing Shard, which drops as a rare quality BOE in Razorfen Downs from some of the trash, just like items such as the Mechbuilder's overalls and Digmaster 5000 from before. The Freezing Shard is an amazing mage-specific wand which gives plus 10 frost spell damage. For frost mages, it's almost as good as the Bone Creeper Stylus from Darkmaster Gantling in Scholarman's, and it's pretty similar to the mage quest reward Ice Fury wand that you have to go to Alderman to get. With the way the Freezing Shard is designed with the frost spell damage, it does actually for once make sense to make it usable by mages only, since they clearly benefit from it the most. If the class restriction wasn't there, I'm sure a lot of warlocks and priests would roll on it as well, even though it's not nearly as good for them. And I think Blizzard wanted to prevent that by adding the mage tag. Maybe they should have done something similar for all classes except Hunter for all those Hunter items out there, but that's too late. The second item is remarkably similar to the Freezing Shard. It's also a mage wand from the Razorfen Downs, but it drops from a boss, Plaguerot the Rotting, and is not nearly as rare as a result. The wand is the Plaguerot Sprig, and its only stat is some increased shadow resistance. As opposed to the Freezing Shard, it makes absolutely no sense here that the Plaguerot Sprig is usable only by mages. The name, icon or stats do not in any way indicate mage item, and it deals nature damage as well. I can understand why warlocks and priests would feel robbed when seeing this item drop. You could argue that mages need it the least because of the class quest where they get to choose between much better wands. Interestingly, when you read through some old comments on the Plaguerot Sprig, there are actually a couple of people complaining it's not available to warlocks in particular, since the shadow resistance it provides could be useful when tanking the Twin Emperors in AQ40. The only wand with more shadow resistance in the game is the Serpentine Scholar from Jet Rune Watcher, and the Plaguerot Sprig only has 3 less resistance points, so it wouldn't be bad at all. Unfortunately, I don't think mages can tank the Emperors very well. So, our last class restricted item is the Shoveler, which drops from both some of the instance and pre-instance trash in Alderman. It's a 2-handed axe and a rare BOE that only warriors can equip. It's a bit of a shame, honestly. Most warriors in their 30s will be wielding a whirlwind axe, so the shoveler probably doesn't see much use at all. If it was open to all classes, at least paladins, enhancement shamans and feral druids could get it, and it's not bad in any way. The stats are actually quite nice. If you're playing a warrior, however, the whirlwind items will definitely be superior. It's sad. The shoveler is another item where the class restriction doesn't make sense. It does more harm to the item than good in my opinion. And that's where I think one of the problems with putting restrictions on items is, whether it's a profession, race or class restriction. It can be done right, but it can also be done poorly. One of the benefits of putting a class tag, for example, on an item is that it gives the class flavor and helps distinguish it from other classes. At the same time, if you give one class special gear, you would preferably want every class to have some kind of special gear. That's what we see with the endgame item sets, where there's something for everybody. With items like the Freezing Shard, the Plaguerot Sprig and the Shoveler, however, those only cover 2 classes and a lot fewer people will ever use them as a result. If there were similar items available to the other classes, this probably wouldn't be that big of a deal to players, but there aren't. In terms of profession restrictions on items, they can definitely be a good thing, and with all the effort you put into a certain profession, you want and expect some unique rewards that not all other people get. Again, it is a way to distinguish the professions from each other like the classes before. That being said, I don't think items like the Servomechanic Sledgehammer or the Phytoblade do much to make engineering or herbalism stand out. And in the end, you're really just limiting the use of the items by putting on more or less random profession tags. If you had items like those from normal quests for all the professions, then sure, but at the same time, if you're filling the game with tons of class, profession and race specific gear, you're not getting the most out of every item because of the restrictions, which is inefficient from a work perspective, and I don't think it's very satisfying as an item designer. I think you want the items you design to have as broad of a use as possible, with some exceptions of course, which is why I think Blizzard went away from designing most of the types of items discussed in the video today. To quickly touch on race specific gear, I think the exact same point can be made here about distinguishing things from each other, in this case the races. In my opinion, that's already done totally fine in a lot of other ways through stuff such as racial abilities, which classes a race can be, the mounts associated with a certain race, and so on. I don't think there's too much need for many race-specific items since it, once again, simply restricts the item's usages, and what you seek to achieve by putting them in can be earned through other means. There's already an imbalance in Classic WoW in terms of which races are the most viable for different classes under different circumstances, and I think the introduction of a lot of race-specific gear could potentially skew this imbalance even more. So, that's it for the forbidden items of Classic World of Warcraft. Even though I criticize some of them and their design, I don't think the odd Phytoblade, Goblin Smasher or Plaguerot Sprig here or there does the game any harm. I actually like that they exist, and it's fun to see the experimentation Blizzard did. At the same time, I haven't actually been in a situation where I needed one of those items but couldn't get it, so that might have changed my perspective. The profession, race and class restrictions all make the items unique and give them some sort of value in that way. But I don't think it's the type of value you're looking for in an item. They're unique exactly because there are so few of them, and there's a good reason for that. Their design is not sustainable in the long run and doesn't make sense from a practical perspective and a gameplay perspective in most cases. Because Vanilla WoW turned out so well, I wouldn't like any less or any more of those types of items. It could be fun in a way to see how the game would look with tons of those items everywhere, but that would probably end like a mad scientist experiment. Thanks for watching the video guys, I hope you enjoyed it. Take care everybody.